Hello, everyone. This is Sherry Greenhouse, Managing Partner of Serum Exchange, and I'd like to welcome you to our first virtual conference webinar for today, QA and Analytics, a match made in heaven, presented by VPI. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type them into that Q&A box. That's on the lower right-hand side of your screen. We'll try to get to as many of your questions as possible, and those will be picked up at the very end of the webinar. If you find you have any technical questions, that's where you're going to want to use chat. Chat's right above Q&A, and if you look at the Send To, in the drop-down box, you'll find WebEx Producer. So if you have any streaming issues, and if streaming goes on for a second, that's perfectly normal. If it stays on for a while, you may want to contact the WebEx Producer, and she'll help you right away. There is a very brief survey that will pop up at the end of this webcast. Please fill that out. Let us know what you thought of this session, and right as soon as you finish that survey, you'll be brought right back into the virtual conference center. Make sure you visit the VPI booth. There's great white papers and brochures and case studies, lots and lots of information in there, so you're going to want to go into their booth. So I'm very pleased to introduce your speaker for today, Patrick Botts from VPI. Patrick serves as the Vice President of Workforce Optimization for VPI. Leveraging more than a decade of field experience as a contact center practitioner, he works closely with customers to capture, analyze, and improve their mission-critical customer interactions. He received his bachelor's in engineering from Arizona State, his MBA from Pepperdine in California, and he currently resides with his wife and two absolutely adorable children near Boston. He also started and moderates the Call Center Experts group on LinkedIn, and he invites you to join those groups. Before we get started, I just want to share a little bit about VPI. VPI has been providing contact center quality monitoring, analytics, performance management, and workforce optimization solutions since 1994, and they've been a Serum Exchange partner for, just maybe even a little over 10 years now. The company's growth has been fueled by its ongoing innovation, great customer support, and a passion for continuous quality improvement. Today, Patrick's going to share some best practices on how to get more value from your current QA program. He'll discuss the difference between the way we've traditionally been doing QA and the benefits of best practitioners for transitioning to a more analytically oriented method of quality assurance. It's now my pleasure to turn this webcast over to Patrick.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Sherry, and thank you all for your time and interest today. It's going to be really fast-paced. I think exciting webinar that I think you'll find very valuable. Before we get started, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the title of the webinar, right? QA and Analytics, a match made in heaven. And analytics is really redefining the way QA is happening and taking place. If you look at this picture, right, you have blind dates, right? That's typically how dating used to happen. And now with the advent of online dating and things like Match.com and eHarmony, which also use analytics, right? It's becoming a lot more intelligent, and you have a better chance of finding love. So what's driving the need for change? Why do we need to, change the way we're doing QM today and start thinking about how we can incorporate analytics into our QA program? I'll let you look at this for a few seconds here. This is really the State of the Union. And as you can see, right, competition is increasing. There's a lot of other factors. As we look at the current business economic environment, we have kind of this iceberg depiction here. We have the external factors on top of the iceberg, right? We have more demanding customers we're trying to please. There's somewhat of a recessionary environment that we're kind of pulling out of now. a lot of mergers and acquisitions. I think nearly, probably 20-30% of our customers have gone through recent mergers and acquisitions, and it's creating a lot of things that we'll talk about below the water here internally that are proving challenging. We're now in a very multi-channel environment. I would say that consumers are actually probably ahead of us in the contact center in terms of their use of multi-channel. In terms of mobile devices, and you look at some of the younger generations, that's all they use, right? Try to get them to pick up the phone, right? They'll try every other method first before they do so. A lot of additional choices and substitutes out there, right? So even those of us that were in a regulated industry or something where there weren't too many competitors, we're starting to see more and more competitors typically. And sales revenues, right? So are typically declining, and not always, right? We have to be more innovative. We have to provide a better customer experience now to differentiate, because products, people are able to copy products a lot quicker than they used to be able to. So service is kind of the key differentiator. Well, what's happening underneath the water, right? Under the iceberg. There's a lot going on, right? So those mergers and acquisitions are causing the siloed systems and data. We're now having to do not only inbound, but a lot more outbound to proactively get in touch with our customers, proactively remind them, proactively try to, cross-sell and upsell them, because it's a lot easier to sell to existing customers than to go out and get new customers. So people that have been doing service for so long, and we hired them as service agents, we're now having to train them on how to sell, right? Whether it's inbound and possibly even outbound. We're still seeing a lot of manual reporting and inaccurate spreadsheets, right? So still the majority of contact centers today are still using spreadsheets in some capacity, and they're just not accurate across different spreadsheets and different sources of data. They're not as timely as they need to be. So there's a trend towards more timely reporting and so forth. Inconsistent service, right? Multi-channel is not easy to be able to handle them effectively, whether you have your agents handling all channels or you have your agents separated into maybe chat and social media, or just social media and just chat and email and phone. Those are decisions we have to make, and we have to continue to provide a consistent service across all channels. And match the mode, right? Depending on what channels your customers are using, match the mode. When you're sending a survey, match it back via that same channel. Lot more metrics and data, right? Especially, we have all these different systems. They have siloed reports. And just because the metrics are there doesn't mean we should really measure them. So we have to get more targeted on the way we measure those metrics as well. So there's a lot going on, and these are some of the factors that are kind of driving the need for change. If we look at customer experience today, this is a recent Forrester Business report. We're not doing a great job on the phone. If you look at the percent that were satisfied, of consumers satisfied with phone service, about 45% still. So we still have a long way to go to get better. Retail, going into the store, we're doing a better job there. But when consumers are contacting us in the contact center, if you look at email and chat, we're even worse. So just a huge opportunity for improvement. And I think, the way we do QA today doesn't necessarily find all those opportunities. The results of poor customer experience, these are some pretty startling stats. 86% of consumers quit doing business with the company because of bad customer experience. That's actually up from 59% 4 years ago. So a major trend towards just, you just don't have the patience, right? We don't have the patience anymore. We've had great experiences with companies, and if we have a bad experience, we're not going to deal with it, and we'll easily move on. So really, if we look at the bottom one here, a single bad interaction will decrease customer loyalty by 66%. It will be remembered by 12 to 14 months. We don't have the opportunity to make a mistake anymore, right? So most of the easy contacts are being handled by self-service today, right? Whether it's, virtual call agents or speech IVRs or the web self-service or mobile apps. Most people, including myself, we try to solve issues first via self-service, and then only the hard questions and the hard things are hitting the contact center. So when that comes in, we don't have an opportunity to make a mistake, because one mistake, we could lose that customer. 96% of dissatisfied customers won't complain, and they'll tell an average of 11 people. I would argue that it's even larger now with social media. So if you happen to get one of those 19% of consumers that had a bad experience and posted on social media, then that could easily go viral. And if it doesn't go, hugely viral, you're still going to typically be seen by thousands. So just stressing the importance that every interaction counts. So this is interesting, and I like this quote here. Quality is not the absence of defects as defined by management as we define it, but really the presence of value as defined by the customers. So if you think about your quality process, your quality form, are you focused on following, agent compliance, right? Most quality forms that I look at today are still very focused on internal compliance. Did the agent do this? Did the agent do this? And, they follow the process exactly, but it's not really aligned with what the customer's perceptions are, what they're looking to get out of the experience. So think about your QA form. Could the agent do everything correct on the QA form, and could there still be a bad customer experience, right? Or could they get a poor score, right? They didn't do everything right, but there was still an excellent customer experience, right? So think about that. I think it's important that we align our quality forms and our quality program with customer expectations and perceptions. So, this is kind of a really telling study that was done over 1,300 assessments in various contact centers in 60 countries. And many of the problems they found were actually not agent related, right? So if our QA process is only focused on the agent and agent compliance and what the agent's doing, then in this study you can see that's only 32% of the issues, of unresolved issues. So they found that 68% was actually not agent related. So they're missing out on a lot of that if you're just focusing on scoring the agent. Some of the factors, the non-agent related reasons, were misrouted calls, company process limitations or policies that were in place. Maybe there's a technical system limitation, right? Things like screen capture are great for determining and finding out what those technical system limitations you may have are, right? If you can view the agent as they're going through their applications and see, maybe there's a gap there, maybe there's things they could do. Even just asking the agents, right, if there's anything holding them back in the application, and maybe you could work with your IT team or your vendor to improve those applications. And then obviously your customer issues and content issues are some other factors. So the American Customer Satisfaction group, they went in there and they also did a study of several companies and looked over time. They looked at the quality scores that were being reported internally, and then they also surveyed the customers. And as you can see, there's typically a huge gap, and I hear this all the time. What's your average QA score? I'll ask the question, does anyone have a QA score in the 90s, right? And people say 91, 92. What's that really mean? Does that mean anything, right? That's our internal kind of benchmark score. But if we look here at what customers are saying, actually less than 60% customer satisfaction. So, start thinking about how you can compare your internal QA scores with customer CSAT scores, whether you're doing post-call surveys or maybe just periodic surveys that you kind of compare, and make sure that your QA form is actually aligned with the customer experience, right? So there's a huge gap. Scores don't really change the agent behaviors, as you know. It's really the coaching on various skills within the QA form and within your process that will change actual behaviors. So this is another benchmark report by the Ascent Group, and what they found is these were the top QA challenges, and I won't read all these, but these are some of the most common ones, and just want to see, are these familiar to you, right? Like difficulty designing the evaluation criteria, maybe untimely or ineffective feedback, right? So just based on my experience, working with some of our clients, when we first went in, sometimes they wouldn't evaluate their calls till the end of the month, right? We call it gang monitoring, right? Where everyone's kind of monitoring at the end of the month just to kind of complete that. And by the time the agents get feedback from coaching, they don't even remember. I mean, after 2 days later, 3 days later, they don't remember that call. So, with some of the new analytics and some of the workflow, it's really reducing that time to feedback and that time to coaching, and we'll show you kind of how that works. Lack of support from management, right? Maybe management's not buying into your QA program, right? Maybe they don't see the value in the QA program, and a lot of that is because it was agent focused, and so our average score went from 91 this month to 92. What does that really mean, right? And we'll show you how to get more value out of QA here when we get into the analytics driven QA. So traditional QA workflow, again, you're going to see kind of some references to dating and things like that, but really it's like rolling the dice, right? So you don't really know what you're getting in a traditional sampling, right? Typically what we do is we do random sampling of calls, and even if we're recording full time, which a lot of more companies are doing these days for compliance purposes, we're still just taking a random sample of those calls. There's a lot of low value interactions, and if you're like many contact center managers, and analysts, you kind of hunt and peck for calls, and maybe you take ones that are a little bit longer. You don't have much data attached to those calls, so maybe it's calls between 3 minutes and 8 minutes, and kind of hunt and peck, and you listen to the beginning of the call to see if it's even worth listening to and coaching on. So a lot of hunting and pecking going on. It's not really that random anyways, because we're still kind of listening to them many times. And you get a lot of these low value calls on the bell curve. What we're really looking for is the best practice calls on the right here and the worst practice calls. The best practice calls are fantastic because those are the ones that we can share with our other agents, either during new hire training or during ongoing coaching, to really show them what best agents are doing, right? You take a recording of not only the audio but the screen on what they're doing before and after the call, and share an example of a successful high-value sale or a customer save, right? That's very powerful. And then the worst practice calls are the ones that we kind of need to improve on and coach on and train, target the skills to improve those calls. So those are the ones we're really trying to find. So I'll kind of go through a workflow that's pretty common. Let's say an agent handles 3,600 interactions per month. So we randomly kind of record those. We manually find relevant calls to evaluate. Let's say in our organization, we evaluate 3 calls per agent per month. What we get is a very, very, very low sampling rate, right? So 0.0833%. It's not really a valid sample at all. We tend to do that, and that's just because we've been doing that for years, right? We can score the agent. It's not really going to tell us too much more about how we can improve our business operations or customer experience as an organization. So if we go, around the cycle here, we typically use the same evaluation form for all call types. If you're already using different evaluation forms for different call types, maybe for sales or different products or different services you offer, then you're already kind of going towards you're trending towards more of an analytics-driven approach. Scoring calls by entering data into either static forms or spreadsheets, And this is kind of what we touched on earlier, is a lot of the reporting and feedback isn't till the end of the week, or sometimes not even till the end of the month. And it loses a lot of value the longer we delay. And then we tend to train agents on everything. We listen to calls this month. What are some of the hot topics, that some of the analysts reported or supervisors reported? And we pull the agents off the phones and often train agents on everything that we felt needed improvement. And this is pretty common, and it may not be exactly the way your workflow is, but it's pretty typical of a traditional QM workflow. So analytics-driven workflow, right? And you guys are familiar with the easy button. This is the find love button, right? So just like, some of the new dating services basically tag more data and create a nice profile about you and profiles about other people, and you can actually they can match you up with someone who would be a really good fit. It's similar to the QM, and what's happening is analytics are actually creating really nice profiles of all the interactions, and you basically tell the systems or the solution what type of profile you're looking for, what types of calls you're interested or chats or interactions, and it'll go find those for you. So I'll kind of show you how that works and how that fits in. Because a lot of people are using analytics today, or starting to, whether it's speech analytics or desktop analytics, but they haven't integrated it in completely into the QM workflow, and that's where there's tons of value. They still have like a separate QM process and kind of a separate analytics group that kind of tries to find things, but you start to see the customers that we work with that have integrated it into their process. They see huge value. So I'll go through an example. So this could be any business, could be, whatever industry you're in. Just kind of apply this scenario to your organization. I'm going to call it your favorite wireless company, YFWC, but it could be any type of product or service that you offer. So there's a campaign, right? The new version of the product or service is launched, the MobiFone 7. And with that launch, we want to try to get MobiFone 6 users to upgrade to MobiFone 7 for only $50 per phone with a 2-year contract. For those of you who are familiar with Lean Six Sigma or Six Sigma principles, to define, measure, analyze, improve, control, works really well with an analytics-driven approach to quality. It's a continuous improvement approach, and we're at VPI are founded on those principles, and pretty much everything we do revolves around the define, measure, analyze, improve, control cycle. But really, in the define stage, we're defining, who the players are, what our strategy is here, and we'll kind of go through and show you what are some of the things we need to do to prepare for this campaign using analytics. So we define our objectives, right? YSWCC's objectives are to upgrade customers to new phone and cross-sell additional services when appropriate, quickly identify issues and opportunities by type. They want to analyze and provide insight into the root causes of issues, accurately measure and improve first contact resolution. So, that one of their big goals this year is first contact resolution. Maybe one of yours as well. It's one of those metrics that is kind of the holy grail of all metrics, and this is something they're going to focus on, and I'll show you how that works with analytics and how that improves that process of measuring and improving FCR. Rapidly communicate issues and resolution tips to client and agents, and notify the marketing department of issues so they can take proactive action. This is probably not uncommon to campaigns that you run, right, for new products, new services, and you want to monitor those carefully because they are new, and you want to see if there's any issues that may be going on. So to prepare for the campaign, we're going to record everything, and this is key, right? So typically companies recorded everything or went from selective recording to full-time recording because of a compliance reason. I want to strongly make the case that, with the cost of recording and storage going down, I highly recommend recording everything. And the reason is you don't really know that if you want to keep that interaction or that call until it's actually taken place. You don't know what actually took part in that call or took place. So you can record everything, and if you don't want to store a lot of it, you can write rules to dump whatever you want, right? So maybe you dump these types of calls that are less than a minute after 7 days. Maybe if it didn't result in a sale, we'll dump that, after 90 days. So record everything and just use rules to determine how long you actually want those calls stored for. So there's a lot of value there. Tag as much data and events to those calls as you can, and I'll show you some clever ways to do that. That's just going to make those interactions even more valuable to you. And then screen recording we talked about, right? 90% of contact centers today support email and 32 support web chat. That's only going to grow. Great way to monitor web chat and email, just like you monitor calls today, is to record screen and see how people are handling more than one web chat at a time, and you really get a great picture. And then screen recording just on calls is phenomenal, especially if you have remote agents that are working from home. What a great way to really see what their experience is and how some issues they may be having. So what we're going to do, we talked about tagging data to call. We're going to tag the following data from the CRM system. It could be an ERP system. It may be a help desk system that you have. Any type of application that your agents are using. We're going to tag the account number, the case ID, the order ID, the disposition. If you have disposition or reason code, that's phenomenal. You can use those in a variety of ways. The product that was upsold and the sale amount. Those are very valuable fields. Those can all be searchable. So you want to tag those, and the technology that does that is called desktop analytics. It's typically just an API or back-end connection to your system that allows you to, while you're recording the call, right? So typically you wouldn't get all this data with the call. Right now you probably get the length of the call, whether it was put on hold if you're lucky, right? Whether it was transferred if you're lucky, the agent that took it, whether it was inbound or outbound, maybe the incoming number. Well, you want to append more data. It just adds more value. So the way desktop analytics works is you basically decide what fields in the CRM system or the application that your agents are working on, and you pick the fields, and then those fields will get tagged to the call. So below you'll see, this is just an example of the call in the media player. So you actually see that data is getting appended to that call. It could be the notes. Again, all of this becomes searchable, so all the notes can be searched on. The disposition code is very valuable. So in this case, it's poor battery life, right? This person had an issue. They called in, about poor battery life. They have a case ID. The phone models were tagged to the call. So whatever you want to tag to the call, maybe you want every field tagged. We have some customers, they started out tagging 120 data fields from their CRM system to the call, but then they found out there was like almost too much data tagged to the call, so it was a little overwhelming. So the best practice is tag about, 10 to 12 additional data components that are of value to you that you feel like you could use for searches and to create what we'll talk about as buckets for QA. Basically custom searches that automatically get sent off to the quality monitoring team. Another way to prepare for this campaign, if you decide you want to use speech analytics or you do have speech analytics, it's essentially an additional data, in addition to the data from your applications that your agents are using, you can now search through the audio within the calls that you're taking. So again, these buckets, they act as just like additional data getting appended to the call. So you're actually appending a tag called requested escalation to the call, or a tag called negative sentiment, or a tag called competitive mention. So these are just categories you create ahead of time. The beauty of some of the more modern speech analytics engines that use conceptual searching or meaning-based searching is you don't have to think of every way someone would say transfer me to a supervisor or requesting an escalation. I put some examples here, right? I like to speak with someone above you. But you don't have to come up with every single way. With a conceptual-based search speech analytics tool, you type in supervisor, it's going to find boss, manager, all the other ways that someone might say that phrase, and it'll bucket those calls for you, or create a tag that gets tagged to the call called requested escalation. Same thing with negative sentiment, right? Words like confusing, frustrating, expensive, anytime those are mentioned, that tag called negative sentiment will get appended to the call record. And again, now if you want to search for anyone who had a negative sentiment, you can do so. I'll show you how this kind of plays out together, right? So it's really, data is the new oil, if you will, right? So it's all about tagging as much data to your interactions as you can because it creates more and more value. So first thing is just call metadata. Metadata, call data, whatever you call it. This is coming from typically your phone system, your ATD, your dialer. This is things like the length of the call, whether it's inbound, outbound, whether it's transferred or not. So we can tag that from this call to the actual call record. Then we talked about desktop analytics. That's data from your actual CRM applications or your servicing applications, your help desk applications, things like account number, the disposition of the call, we had poor battery life. This disposition happens to be billing inquiry, so we can tag that to the call, so you can see it's getting tagged to the call down there. And then these speech categories. So essentially what you do is you say, all right, we want to find all calls that were inbound calls that were transferred with the disposition of billing inquiry where someone requested escalation and there's negative sentiment. That's a lot of things you're looking for, but you can do that because you have all those tagged to the actual interaction. But think of the power, right? Maybe we want to add another one saying, oh, well, someone had a competitive mention. So, it'll just narrow your search results smaller and smaller and smaller the more you actually add to, and you can really target what you're trying to find. But now you have a lot more data tagged to your call than you used to. So the campaign results, right? So we had this new campaign, the Mobile Phone 7 launched. What we saw was the incoming call volume is much higher than expected. And I have an example of a ticker here. These are becoming more and more popular. If you're familiar with performance management tools, these are kind of the tickers that are always on your desktop. They're always docked. Managers have them, agents have them, executives have them. Kind of like a CNN ticker that shows them how they're doing in real time on all the metrics they care about. Just drag and drop the metrics you want into the ticker. And they're popular. So this manager is just using a standard performance management ticker. The call volume is higher than expected. They're higher handle times, declining first contact resolution rates, and disappointing upsell sales conversion rates. So the campaign isn't going as well as we expected. So how do we prioritize the issues and opportunities, right? So there's all this stuff going on. Where do we start, right? And we got Cupid here with his arrow. Again, he's trying to find love. The first thing is intuition. Start with the easy things. And you could probably do a lot of these already within your QM program. You see things like high handle time. You can actually pinpoint and pull out those calls that have high handle time and send that off to QA. Transfers and holds are phenomenal. Work a lot with JD Power Associates and they found that there's a huge decrease in satisfaction every time a call is transferred, right? So those are ones that you want to pinpoint and target. If you're getting that data now, you might be with your recording system. That's fantastic. Test that out. Try, for 1 month sending calls off to QA that were transferred. And almost every agent will transfer calls, if not all your agents. So you can still score your agents, but you'll find out reasons why calls are getting escalated or transferred, and maybe you can determine the root causes and solve those issues. Maybe high call volume. These are simple ones to start with that I recommend with. And then the best in class, see some of the other issues are upsell attempts that didn't result in a sale. We want to figure out why we're not selling, get people up to the new version. And repeat calls, first contact resolution, a huge one. So, start with the easy things first that are right in front of you, and then once you do that, then you'll start getting used to this analytics-driven QA approach, and you can target some of the issues that are a little more challenging. So how do you prioritize these issues, right? So I like this matrix. It's the control impact matrix. Again, it's used a lot in Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma. We kind of look at what do we actually have control over and what will create a high impact, right? So things like sales, right? We can actually impact that within our contact center by typically either providing tools or training the agents on skill gaps they might need some help on. That's something that has high control and high impact, right? If it's low control, low impact, we kind of leave those alone for now. Things like first contact resolution, it has high impact, very high impact, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But the control you may not have complete control over it. There may be things outside your contact center. Frost and Sullivan found that 66% of things, first contact resolution is actually agent related or training related. The other percent are actually outside of the contact center. So we saw that earlier in another study. You kind of see there's things that are outside of your control, but still important. So we'll go through the cycle here. An agent takes the same 3,600 interactions per month, but now we're going to take an analytics-driven approach to QM. We're going to sample 3 of 200 no sales for that agent per month. Not every agent is going to sell every time, so we're going to have no sale calls that we can actually evaluate. We get a sampling rate of 1.5%, which is much higher than the 0.0833%. And, just to give you some time, an idea of what this is, a lot of our elections and things, we elect people on less than the sampling rate. So, then what happens is you get a to-do list of all those no sale calls. In fact, there's no more hunting and pecking. That's one of the things that typically reduces workflow time by like 20 to 40%. It's just having a to-do list, not having to go look for calls. Whether it's a high-value sales order, maybe those are calls you care about, calls with multiple transfers, upsell attempts with no sale. In this case, that's what we're looking for. But just giving your evaluators a to-do list without having to go hunt and peck for calls, you'll save, up to 40% time right there. And then what we want to do is gather key drivers on our QA form of why the call didn't result in a sale. So you have your typical QA form. What you want to do is add a question. And you're going to have agent-related issues and non-agent-related issues. So essentially what you're doing is you're gathering more data again. So as we go through the QA process, we're evaluating all our agents on no sale. You may say, well, you're evaluating my bad calls. We're evaluating every agent on no sales this month. So we're going to, these are actually where the dots are check boxes. Essentially what you're going to check what the issues are. They didn't ask the proper probing questions. They didn't understand the questions asked. Maybe the technical system limitations. These are things that are important to track and see what the key issues were. Well, what we found out by doing a targeted QA evaluation on those sale calls, agents were getting a lot of questions they couldn't answer. Can we keep our old phone number? Can I use a SIM card from another phone? Will the phone work overseas? Will it play music over Bluetooth? Can you change it better yourself? Will it sync with Outlook? These were a lot of questions that were being asked, and agents weren't able to respond, so people were uncomfortable upgrading and moving to the new model. So then, essentially, another thing that's really great about analytics-driven QA is you actually build in coaching into your QA form. So I'll show you an example of what that looks like. You can add an action to your QA form, and so here's a question: how much does the agent know about the customer's issue? We can set it up so if the goal is below 8, then we automatically want to send a coaching assignment, and that coaching assignment gets sent just to those agents who fell below on that question. You can add actions. An action could be a coaching assignment. It could be a recorded call of a great example for them to listen to. It could be just a little alert that gets sent to their text ticker or their desktop. And the coaching, the beauty is typically nowadays is integrated with workforce management schedules, so they can't just take self-paced coaching whenever they want. It's when you schedule a coaching job within workforce management, the queues are low and allows them to take coaching. The queues fill up, and it'll just say, hey, you have to get back on the call, and it remembers where they're at in that e-learning course or that coaching course when they resume during their next coaching break. And then typically, we saw the tickers that the manager was using. Agents also have tickers, and QA scores are integrated into those. Most tickers that our customers use are if it's an inbound one, it's things like adherence, QA score. Maybe they're doing some selling, there's some sales. Customer satisfaction is a big one. And then on the right, you'll see things like how many calls are in queue, how many abandons have we had recently, things like that. So these are, you can customize it versus the goal, versus the group. And again, they see, if you look at under coaching here, the number 4, that shows, you click on that, it will show the 4 coaching courses that have been assigned to them based on their quality scores and based on the questions in the form. And then they can drill down on the scorecard and they get an expanded view on how they're doing on a daily, weekly, monthly view. So you see a big trend towards transparency. In the past, we couldn't really show agents where they were at in real time. Just the technology wasn't there, but it's a lot easier with open databases and performance management technology to do so. There's a huge value. And you see, just by showing agents tickers in real time, there's customers that report 40% improvement in handle time without doing anything else, just showing how they're doing versus their group and handle time. If you're in a sales or collections environment, you put things like, dollars collected, promise to pay, sales versus their group and versus their goal, you're going to see a huge increase right away. And it's just a psychological thing that happens. And then you can set up timely alerts, just like you could alert from the QM form. You could send coaching based on any of the QA questions. In an analytics-driven world, you can also create alerts or notifications on any metric. So conversions, fall below a certain threshold. Maybe want to notify the supervisor or remind the agent, things of that nature. So the next major issue, right? We remembered FCR was came up on the supervisor's dashboard as declining, right? And this is one I'd like to spend a little time on because it's such an important metric. And I know it's one that we get calls on all the time is, hey, we have an FCR project. We really want to learn how to better measure and how to improve it, right? And I think we all want to do so. And if it was an easy metric, we'd already all be doing it. But it's a little more challenging. I'll kind of show you why and how we can tackle it. So FCR has very high impact. It's the highest correlated metric to customer satisfaction of all metrics. Every 1% gain in FCR translates to 1% gain in CSAT. And if you look at the bottom set here, 15% of customers who do not get their inquiry or problem resolved are likely to go to a competitor versus 1% if you resolve it on the first contact. So it's huge importance. you can see the direct correlation of FCR to customer sat. Again, one that we really want to focus on. And really it doesn't stop there, right? So if we can, not only are we going to improve CSAT by 1%, and some people I talk to actually know what a 1% CSAT increase means in terms of revenue, customer lifetime revenue in the organization. If you don't, it's something worth exploring. Because if you know that and how many millions of dollars that a 1% increase in CSAT means, then if you can improve your FCR and show a direct correlation to that, you improve your FCR by 3%. I mean, that could be, depending on the size of the organization, it could be huge amounts of money, and you can actually show the executives and really get their buy-in on a lot of the things they're doing here. So efficiency, obviously got fewer calls, less workload. If you look at profitability here, 66% of contact center costs today are due to callbacks, right? I mean, that's a huge amount, just people having to call back because issues weren't resolved. And you're not going to be able to resolve every issue on the first contact. We have, I know people that are measuring second contact resolution because their calls, many of them they can't do on the first call, so they measure second contact resolution or contacts to resolution, and they try to improve that. But whatever it is, as long as you're kind of reducing the number of contacts it takes to solve something within your organization, I'm happy to see that. So what do you need to accurately measure FCR? You need to know who the customer is, why are they contacting you, and when did they last contact you for the same reason. A lot of people that I speak with are using things like post-call surveys, right, or quality monitoring reports. Maybe you have a question, did the agent solve the customer's issue? Or on a survey, you ask, did the agent solve your issue, right? And customer may say, yep, we might mark it on the QA form, yes. The challenge is if I called you about my bill and I asked for an address change and some other changes, and then, I answer the post-call survey, I say, yep, they solved my issue, they changed my address correctly. Well, then I get my bill in the mail 30 days later, and it's still wrong, and I call back in again, right? So it's a repeat contact that you're viewing it as a resolved issue, and it really isn't. So that's very common. There's a lot of circumstances where you actually have to define a time period, and that's number 3 here. When did they last contact you for the same reason? So who the customer? It's either typically captured from your CRM system or from your IVR ACD. And the beauty of these analytic systems is you can tie them into your QM system. If you already have a QM recording system, you can layer these on top and they'll measure the first contact resolution. Basically data analytics. It's going to look at your CRM system. Why are they contacting you? If you have a case ID or service ticket ID, it makes measuring first contact resolution a lot easier. If you don't, maybe you're an inbound center and you don't measure service ticket ID, but maybe you track reason codes. So what you would do in that case is say, every time this customer ID or this account ID calls in for the same reason, we're going to flag it as a repeat call, and we're going to listen to that call and figure out what the reasons are for that. Maybe they call about the same product. You need some sort of differentiator. Why are they contacting you? And you can get it from a variety of places. The easiest is through desktop analytics from your application. That's that kind of back-end API or connected to your system. And the other ways are, you could do it through an IVR, incoming phone number. I've even seen people try to do it through speech analytics. It's not as accurate as just tagging the data from your system. But maybe there's some reasons that aren't categorized, or maybe you don't track this position code within your CRM system or your ERP system. And then when did they last contact you? This should be different for different call types. That billing example there, that you may need a 45-day window for them to get their bill in their mail. It could be, I talked to someone, they just moved from a 7-day window to a 21-day window because calls were still coming in about the same issue after that 7 days. So you want to define that by type of call, and you can adjust that by call type. In this case, for YSWC, we're going to do it from the CRM system and then reason codes. So then what happens, it automatically classifies your interactions, and you get the reasons that people are calling in again. In this case, if you look at the example below, you'll see all of these calls. Person had to contact 3 times. It could be maybe they started an email, then they web chatted, then they called in, and you see the entire interaction because it's pulling it together by case ID. And then you see that the reason was billing. And so when you're evaluating and listening to, you don't just listen to the one call like we do today. Typically, you get the entire interaction, the entire customer experience from start to finish. If you're able to, you may even be able, if your customers log in to a website on your site, you may be able to even pull in their website experience into this. And then you have access to things like Pareto charts. Typically, again, these are used a lot in Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, where you're kind of mapping out all the reasons people call in for the same reason. And billing inquiries in this case is 81%. It's that 80-20 rule is very common, so don't be shocked if you see things like this, where if we can solve the billing inquiry issue, then we've essentially solved 80% or 81% in this case of the reasons people are calling in again. And then you can actually drill down on these charts to actually see all the calls related to repeat billing inquiries and send them off to QA. So what you're going to do is you're going to actually add a question, just like we added one more question to the sales QA form. We're going to add one to our repeat calls QA form. Why was the issue not resolved? And we're going to put agent-related issues and non-agent-related issues. And even if you're still using Excel or whatever you use, you can still add this question. The agent didn't offer electronic payment options. The agent didn't understand the issue. The agent was unaware of recent events. Maybe there was misrouted calls, or it's difficult to find information on the website. That's a pretty common one for repeat billing inquiries. They couldn't find the issues, and if they just put a little more information on the website, that would solve a lot of those issues. But you want to gather data. So now as you're queuing repeat billing inquiries, which every agent will take, then you're actually gathering additional data. And then the key to first contact resolution, because most of us are trying to measure it, but actually doing something about it is huge. So an action plan would just look like something like this, right? And everyone should be accountable, not everyone, but there should be someone accountable to every metric within your organization. So if FCR drops, what happens? Who's accountable? This would be an action plan. Coaching and training, we're going to train agents on electronic payment strategies and other billing skills. Train agents to upsell and cross-sell additional services. Maybe we route calls to the best agents with specialized skills associated with billing. Reduce our call volume by using virtual call agents or an IVR. Try to have them handle the calls that your live agents really don't need to be taking. The simple FAQs and things of that nature. So automated bill questions, processing payments, things of that nature. And then add more information and more functionality on your self-service website. So this would be a typical action plan to reduce those repeat billing inquiries. Again, that's 81% of why people are calling us is related to billing inquiries. So kind of just to sum it all up, what are the benefits of analytics-driven quality monitoring? You're focusing on business outcomes, right? It's a value-driven QA workflow. So you're going to have better business outcomes. By improving those outcomes, you're going to see a huge jump in CSAT. Again, you're aligning your QA forms and your workflow around the customer experience. Automated workflow will lower your costs tremendously. So even if you just want, you could typically either reduce the QA staff if you need to and put them in other positions of value, or you can use them to kind of have teams of people that just dig for additional issues or, information. That's common. They set up separate analytics teams that kind of go and find additional information. But the actual QA workflow, you can reduce anywhere from 20 to 80% just by automating things like to-do lists and the automated coaching and things of that nature. And then agent performance will increase because now you're not only just focusing on the agent, but you're solving a lot of the other issues that hindered their progress typically. So, some of the system limitations, maybe some of the things that were out of their control, you're actually surfacing those and helping improve those. And you're able to focus more, your coaching efforts more on the skills they need to actually improve their behavior. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for your time and I see we have a lot of great questions. I also wanted you to, if you're not already a member, join the Call Center Experts group. It's a great discussion forum for things like quality assurance and training and just all things contact centers. And it's a very active group, and I invite you to join me there. So, thanks so much.
Thank you, Patrick. We have just a couple minutes for questions, and I just want to remind everybody to get a copy of the slides. You can go to the Virtual Contact Center Conference platform, log in. When you go to the agenda, you'll see all of the sessions, and right next to the sessions are the PDFs. Okay, here's a question. What should be the criteria to decide evaluation frequency? Are there any best practices for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. Typically, the way we start out is, we might do a little bit more frequent monitoring on the upfront. So as we're bringing agents on board, and the monitoring is, it's important, but I think the coaching that goes side by side and hand with that monitoring is even more important, right? So maybe it's 10 monitors for new hires for the first 3 months, right? And again, the monitoring is one of those things where if you're just focusing on compliance, this and that, you may be instilling the wrong behaviors. But I think if you focus those monitoring sessions on behaviors, I think you're going to see some real value there. One thing that some of our customers do is they allow their agents to flag calls that they'd like to be coached on, but not necessarily scored or evaluate, right? So they'll pick their own calls and say, hey, I need a little bit of help on this. It's not going to count towards their QA score, but it actually allows them to kind of proactively get involved in that process and pick those calls. It's a real value, and it's a great kind of coaching tool. Again, I focus the QA on kind of finding issues that are beyond typically what we look for in an agent compliance type of QA, and then really use the QA as a coaching tool. So we're seeing also more of a trend towards the people that are actually doing the QA, doing the coaching as well. And I know that's, some organizations not possible. There are some benefits with having kind of a third party, non-biased, someone else doing the QA from a compliance perspective. But when you get into the softer skills, or the things that we actually need to improve within our contact center, there's real value of having the frontline supervisors and managers actually doing the QA and coaching.
What sort of savings can we expect from using analytics with QA?
That's another great question. So the ROI is huge. Again, it's one of those things where the analytics, what it does is the workflow especially, right, just automating everything from picking the calls, right? Think of how much time we spend just hunting and pecking for calls, right? So to have that to-do list, to bring up the right form. So you don't even need to pick what form. It knows if it's a sales call. It knows if it's a repeat inquiry. It'll pull up whatever form that you have associated with that call. And then the ability to automatically send out coaching and messages. Maybe it's just a reminder message. We have, a customer that sends out reminder messages based on if they didn't do something, like maybe they didn't offer, suggestions to use their website e-services payment program, right? So they don't do that, it automatically just sends them a quick reminder. And then they get enough reminders after one or two of those, and they're doing it every time. So just that alone, so that time, and that's headcount right there that you can use for other things. And then the real value is things like first contact resolution, solving some of these key issues. I mean, that can lead to millions and millions of dollars, like that 1% improvement in FCR. If you use QA to target repeat contacts or contacts for customer user complaints, maybe we want to save more customers, things like that. Just huge benefits there.
Okay, great. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for questions. What we can do is forward your questions to Patrick, and he will get back to you, any of the questions that we were not able to get to today. And I want to remind you to go to the VPI booth. They do have a Kindle Fire HD as a prize drawing, so as long as you go to the booth, you are eligible for that drawing, so you want to make sure you do that. And at 2:30, we have our next session, which is what happens when quality assurance training and workforce management intersect. And this is will be presented by CareWise Health. So I think you're going to find a very interesting session as well. So Patrick, this was a great session. Thank you so much. And to get those slides and to get those recordings, you just need to log into to the virtual conference platform. Everything is right there. The recordings will be available tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Patrick, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it.
And at this point, we will be closing this webcast. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good afternoon.
Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you.